July 14th, 1944. High above the skies of Hungary, a formation of American bombers witnesses a sight that simply shouldn't exist. One of their own B-17s is cruising alongside them, but it has no face. The nose has been blown clean off. The cockpit instruments are gone. The pilots are exposed to a 200-mile-per-hour hurricane of freezing wind. By all laws of aerodynamics, this 30-ton machine should be a flaming wreck on the ground, but it's not falling, it's flying. This is the story of Mizpah, the aircraft that was legally dead, and the pilot, Ewald Swanson, who refused to let her go down. Let's rewind to the morning of July 14th, 1944. The target was the Ferencváros marshalling yards in the heart of Budapest, a critical artery for the German Nazi war machine. The 483rd Bomb Group launched 60 flying fortresses into the dawn sky. Among them was Mizpah, tail number 4232109. At the controls was 24-year-old First Lieutenant Ewald Swanson. He was a steady hand, a pilot who trusted his machine. As they climbed to cruising altitude, the air grew thin and cold. The crew settled into that familiar, terrifying rhythm of a long-haul bombing run. The hum of the engines was hypnotic, but every man on board knew that entering Hungarian airspace meant flying directly into a wall of steel. As the formation crossed the border, the sky turned black. The German ground defenses unleashed a relentless curtain of 88mm flak. To a bomber crew, flak sounds like gravel being thrown against a tin roof, a constant, terrifying clatter against the fuselage. Mizpah took a beating immediately. Shrapnel shredded the tail section. Holes appeared in the wings like moth bites. But the formation held. They pressed on, eyes locked on the rail yards below. They were seconds away from the drop. Bombardier Kenneth Dudley was hunched over his Norden bomb sight, lining up the crosshairs on the rail lines that were keeping the German army alive. The bombs dropped away, and for a split second, they thought they had made it. Then, chaos. A single 88mm shell fired from miles below found its mark with horrifying precision. It didn't just hit the plane, it landed squarely on the nose. The explosion was absolute. In an instant, the entire nose section of the B-17 simply vanished. The bombardier and navigator were gone, vaporized in a pink mist. The blast peeled the aluminum skin back over the cockpit like a banana peel. Inside, the temperature instantly plummeted to 30 degrees below zero. A hurricane of freezing air and shrapnel tore through the cabin. Wing gunner Sergeant Wesley Tucker was thrown back, pierced by metal. The plane, now missing its front weight, violently pitched up, threatening to stall and flip into a death spiral. This is where the story should have ended. A B-17 without a nose is aerodynamically unflyable. But Ewald Swanson was still alive. His instrument panel was gone. His windshield was gone. He was staring directly into the 150-mile-per-hour slipstream. The control columns were useless, but Swanson refused to bail out. He screamed orders over the roar of the wind. The surviving crew did something unheard of in aviation history. They crawled into the bomb bay and found the exposed control cables, the raw steel lines that moved the rudder and elevators. Under Swanson's screaming command, they began to fly the 30-ton bomber by hand, physically pulling the cables to fight the plane's desire to flip over. To the crew of the nearby B-17, nicknamed Ivan, the sight was haunting. They looked out their windows and saw a blood-soaked bomber flying formation, without a front. It looked like a ghost ship. But the German gunners weren't finished. Over 200 anti-aircraft guns were still tracking them. Another explosion rattled the airframe, this time taking out the number 2 engine. With the nose gone, the aerodynamics were ruined. The drag was immense. Mizpah began to bleed speed. She was dropping back, falling out of the protective box of the formation.
For 10 perilous minutes, Swanson and his crew wrestled the crippled beast, trying to put as much distance as possible between them and the target. But they were losing the battle.
They were now alone in the sky, a sitting duck for enemy fighters. Swanson gave the final order, bail out. He held the plane steady, fighting the yoke with every ounce of strength he had, buying his crew precious seconds to jump. 7 men made it out, but when it was Swanson's turn, the plane revolted. Without his hands on the controls, the B-17 pitched up violently, pinning him inside the fuselage with centrifugal force. He was trapped. He clutched his parachute to his chest, waiting for the stall. As the plane shuddered and froze in the air, he lunged forward, jumping out through the gaping hole where the nose used to be. But as he exited, disaster struck. His parachute pack snagged on the jagged, torn metal of the cockpit. The metal ripped through the fabric of his chute. It was a brutal tear, but the force flung him free of the spinning wreckage. He was falling from 20,000 feet. Swanson passed out from the lack of oxygen and the violence of the spin. When he opened his eyes, the ground was rushing up to meet him. He pulled the ripcord. The chute opened, but it was damaged, shredded by the exit. It wasn't slowing him down enough. He was falling too fast. Below him, he saw a dense forest. He steered for the canopy, hoping the branches would break his fall. He crashed through the treetops with bone-shattering force. Branches whipped against him, tearing his flight suit. He hit the ground hard, breaking his leg. Silence returned to the forest. Against all odds, he was alive. German medics found him minutes later. He had landed right next to a prisoner of war camp. As they treated his wounds, he looked around and saw familiar faces. To his absolute amazement, his entire crew, the men he thought he had lost, had been captured and brought to this exact same camp. It was, as they later called it, a happy accident. They spent the harsh winter of 1944 as prisoners, but they were together. Ewald Swanson returned home a lieutenant colonel, but his greatest achievement wasn't the rank, it was the brotherhood formed in that broken fuselage. He passed away in 2009, the only pilot in history to fly a Fortress without a cockpit. Because you can blow the face off a B-17, but you cannot break the spirit of the men who flew them. History connects us all, across every border and every ocean. Let us know in the comments which country or city you are watching from right now. And if you want to be on board for the next mission, make sure to click that subscribe button. We have many more stories to tell.